Are you tired of using the same old input fields in your projects? What if I told you there's a way to make them more dynamic and engaging? Imagine an animated input field where the label floats above when the user enters its input. It's easy to create and adds a touch of interactivity to your project. Let's dive in and bring some life to those input fields. First, I will create a div with the class login as the main container. Next, I will use a div with the class input wrapper to wrap the input field and label. The input field will be of type text with the class input field, and the required attribute will be set to false. This required attribute will later be used in CSS to create a floating label animation. Finally, we need a label tag associated with the input element. That's it for the HTML section. First, we will style our main container element with class login. We will give padding on all sides of 2.5 rem. Similarly, we will set its background color to a deep shade. Next, for the element wrapping the input element and label with the class input wrapper, we will set its position to relative. Now it's time to style the input field. We'll start by setting the font to Poppins. We'll apply padding of 1 rem on all sides. The text color will be white to stand out against the background. To maintain a sleek design, we'll use a 2px solid transparent border on all sides of the input, and we'll set a transition for smooth animations when the input state changes. The background will also be transparent. To maintain a clean look, we'll remove the default outline that appears when the input is focused. Lastly, the width will be set to 100%, allowing the input to fill its container. Likewise, we'll add some interactivity to our input field. When a user clicks on the input field, we'll change its border color to indigo blue. Now, let's style the label within the input wrapper class. We'll position it absolutely, setting the top property to 50%, which centers it vertically. The left property will be 20px, positioning it 20 pixels from the left edge of its container. We'll apply a translate y minus 50% to adjust the vertical position and ensure it is centered perfectly. The label's color will be set to white, and we'll add a transition effect of 0.3 seconds for smooth changes. Lastly, setting pointer events to none makes sure the label doesn't interfere with mouse interactions. Now that we've styled the input element, let's move on to creating a floating label effect. To achieve this, we'll target the label that is a sibling to the input field when the input field is focused, and also when the input field contains valid content. First, we set the top property to 0, moving the label to the top of the input field. Next, we position it 15px from the left side. The font size is reduced to 14px. As the label moves to the top, we give it a dark background color to blend with the overall design. To keep the label text readable, we add 5px padding on the left and right, while keeping the top and bottom padding at 0. This results in a clean and visually appealing floating label that activates when the input is focused or contains valid content. With this, we've just created a cool input animation using only CSS. This not only makes the user experience better, but also gives our form fields a more polished look. That's it for today. If you enjoyed this tutorial or have any questions, feel free to leave a comment.